Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's American Ambulance Association webinar, Digital Marketing for EMS Recruitment and Retention, presented by Scott Moore and Kathy Fredrickson. Before we go ahead and get started, just a couple housekeeping items. If you guys have any questions throughout today's presentation, please use that Q&A feature on your menu. Kathy and Scott are going to try to get to all of your questions throughout today's presentation, and we will also hold a brief Q&A portion at the end of today's webinar. As always, our webinars are recorded and will be available online this afternoon or early tomorrow morning on the AAA store in the on-demand section. So feel free to access that on-demand recording to share with others at your group, or if you weren't able to participate live today, please be sure to access that recording. With that, we'll go ahead and hand it over to Scott to get us started.
Thank you, Meg, and thank you everyone for joining. It looks like we got just roughly 50 people. I know we had somewhere around the area of around 100 registered for today. And as I look through the list, I see a few names that I recognize. In fact, one or two that I used to work with. Dalton, hello, thank you for joining. So I appreciate all of you taking the time to come on here today. This is, of course, digital marketing for EMS recruitment and retention. And as many of you may recall, back in October of 2021, when we were in the midst of the pandemic, Samantha Hilker, who is one of the AAA staff, she's a project manager handling much of what really is cost collection. Sam introduced me to Kathy, who I will let Kathy introduce her. Let me actually jump forward here one slide. Kathy, do you want to introduce yourself? Give a little bit of background.
Absolutely. Well, this is my second time presenting for the American Ambulance Association with Scott. We met through Samantha. I met Samantha as a result of her nonprofit work with a youth-focused organization called Breakwater, which is for youth struggling with substance use. And so she was working on the nonprofit side there. And I had a team of students during COVID complete a full digital marketing audit for her. We did a lot of that during the pandemic. We did 126 different audits when I launched the Digital Marketing SOS project. So Samantha was one of those clients, and that's how we got introduced. I am the Digital Marketing Clinic Director at UW Oshkosh through our Wisconsin Small Business Development Center. So we are actually a part of the whole network of small business development centers throughout the state of Wisconsin. And on college campuses, they have small business development centers who refer small businesses to us and my team of digital marketing interns to address their greatest digital marketing needs. This truly in our state is tax dollars at work, because we are funded through grants. And so the services that we provide to businesses are at no cost. So I encourage any ambulance organizations, and we did serve one Gold Cross the first year we started, but any others throughout the state of Wisconsin can apply. I'm sorry to others in other states, it's just for Wisconsin. But that is my role as a digital marketing clinic director. I'm also a marketing faculty member. I am a teaching professor. We officially have a HR brought a title to bear for those like myself that you see I'm a practitioner. So I am not a research faculty member. I'm not research focused. I'm practitioner based. So I am a teaching professor at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. Just for a geographic feel, we are 45 minutes south of Green Bay. So yes, we're in Packer territory. And we are in the third largest metro area in the state of Wisconsin. So you see, we've got Milwaukee, Madison, and then our region, which is called collectively the Fox Cities. So those are my two roles. I am thrilled to work alongside Scott again to bring another view and another perspective on many of the topics he's discussed with your group in the past, and that is the recruitment and retention, but looking at it through the lens of a digital marketer.
Yeah, thank you. And, I was lucky enough to present Wisconsin EMS Association up right outside the Green Bay practice field and got to visit Lambeau Field, which if you've never had an opportunity, highly, highly recommend it. Now, I happened to do it in February when it was -16, and I don't recommend that. And I did say to every person at the conference, they make moving trucks that come up this far north that you can actually go somewhere south. But to come there in the summer and the warmer months, it's just amazing. So back 2 years ago, just a little under 2 years ago, Kathy and I did a webinar where Kathy had reached out to two of our AAA members, both Royal Ambulance in California, who many of you may have heard me speak about before, and Bell Ambulance in Wisconsin, both really outstanding organizations. And one of the things that I liked about working with Kathy and her team was that they take, we in EMS tend to look at things very myopically. Why? Because that's what we know. There are a few people on here, like I know Dalton is very involved in social media and in EMS and has a lot of followers and really does a wonderful job. What I'd say, though, is, guys like me who came up from the street and typically managed EMS organizations, I came up before there was the internet. I came up before there was social media. And so one of the things that I think we are starting to really recognize is how to leverage, or not how to leverage, but also that your web presence, your social media and your website and all of those digital presence is frankly more important today than it has ever been. And so if you didn't get a chance to watch that webinar that we did back in October, I would strongly suggest that you go back and take a peek at it. Really, both of those agencies I've spoken with since, and I've been to both of them before, said that following Kathy's recommendations and her analysis, that they made several changes and really have seen some dramatic improvement in their digital presence. Now, of course, as any self-respecting lawyer does prior to doing any presentation, we say, this is intended for informational purposes. In other words, don't rely on anything for legal advice I'm about to tell you, because we're just doing education and informational purposes only. So just quickly, I know most of you are really not here to hear me. You're here to hear what Kathy has to say, and we'll get there just shortly. But just a quick agenda, a few agenda items. We're going to talk a little bit about the state of recruitment and retention in EMS right now. Then really, I'm going to hand it off over to Kathy, where she's going to hit on sort of employer brand 3.0, look at a couple of case studies. We found two more EMS agencies, both AAA members, active AAA members, who were interested in having this analysis done for them. And then Kathy's going to continue to talk about the 4 zones of social media marketing, and then we will leave some time for questions. So as I've been talking, I've been working now with the American Ambulance Association for almost over 8 years now. And when I came on 8 years ago, way before COVID, we thought the biggest issue that EMS had was reimbursement. And while that is a really big issue, one of the things that I was talking about way back then was that I thought workforce was the single biggest challenge facing public safety and EMS organizations in this country, even 8 years ago. And frankly, I was yelling to get your car off of the tracks before the train comes through the crossing. Well, the train has come through the crossing now, and we're trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces and hopefully move forward. What I will say is everything is harder now, right? In fact, for multiple reasons, everything is harder. We have seen, and while this is a similar slide to the one we had in the last webinar, I've been able to update all of the media, because if you type into any search engine today, EMS workforce shortage. Now we know that there's a global workforce shortage, but if you type in EMS workforce shortage, you will see more activity than you've ever seen, at least in my 32-year history, over 32 years in EMS. There's more activity, more stories about agencies that are closing. Volunteerism is dropping off. People have decided that working in EMS, some of them during the pandemic, they just said it's not worth it anymore. In fact, I stopped responding to calls mid-2020 as a choice by our family about, my wife's in healthcare as well. One of us had to stay out of the line of fire because we have kids who are still in their teens. So we know the workforce issue has come, but we also know that there has been a significant change in people's relationship with what they do for work. And COVID played an enormous role in that regard. A lot of folks just said, you know what? I want a different relationship. I want to work so that I can live, not the other way around. And For a lot of folks who do this job, I took $1 an hour pay cut from a grocery store in 1990. For a lot of people who take this job, it is clearly not for the money. And that we know that there isn't the value placed upon it by the payers and government that probably should be. In fact, not probably should be, that there should be, given the role that EMS providers and EMS organizations play in the broader healthcare spectrum, in the communities that we serve, and public safety roles that we have. But what we know is people have said, I definitely feel differently about work today than I did 5 years ago. And so this is really the only slide that pretty much looks the way it did back 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago. Why? Well, because when I went to update all of the research, much of this still holds true, right? McKinsey did a huge research project on this great attrition, great attraction. What is it about? What are the factors that really drive whether people leave an organization? And then, frankly, the converse to that is what drives them to an organization. And so what we know about what makes them leave, well, they don't feel valued. And in our profession, that can be really, really hard, given that most of the people that we encounter are not exactly thrilled we're there to begin with. They're thrilled that we came to help them, but they're not always exactly thrilled that we're there. If they had their choice, we would not be stepping into their lives that day. The relationship with their manager or their supervisor, Gallup has researched this for well over 30 years at this point, and we know that the absolute number one factor that drives employee engagement in organizations is the relationship that the employee has with the person that they identify as their immediate supervisor. And what do we know? We know that your average frontline supervisor only gets about 6% of their time to engage, coach, and mentor people. And the only research I could find on that was in retail. The reality is, in our workplace, where most of our folks are working largely independently out on the road, they're not in one retail setting. Probably the interaction with your frontline supervisor at best is 3%. And when they do have that interaction, a lot of times it's in passing. You're not necessarily getting an opportunity to develop a really strong relationship with the person who you might identify as your leader. That really does impact it, because if you've worked on an ambulance for any period of time, you can know that you could say in your head when you woke up, there's absolutely no way I'm picking up a shift today. And if someone called me and said, hey, but the shift's with Kathy, or it's with Dalton, or it's with Jim Finger, I'll tell you what, even though I was no way I was going to work that day because it was with one of them, I'm going to go work it. Why? Because that is the relationship that you have that really fundamentally changes the experience that you have at work. And then, of course, there's a whole chunk of folks who really, while they may have had strong camaraderie 15, 20, 30 years ago when they started in EMS, like we did, that's really changed, because high turnover, we know the Newton 360 AAA turnover study says turnover is anywhere between 26 and 35%. What we know is we're seeing pretty much a revolving door of people, right? Roughly 1/3 of our workforce is disappearing every single year, and new people are showing up. So every 3 years, we have functionally 100% turnover. What happens? It is hard to develop relationships when the door keeps moving. Conversely to that, we know that what people are looking for when they go to work are, hey, I of course want pay and benefits. Why? I need to be able to earn a living. That is number one. But if you really take a look at the number two issue, and it's only a couple of 3 percentage points difference, it's work-life balance, right? It's getting back to what kind of relationship do I have with not only my work, the profession I choose, but the workplace that I decide to call home. And so given that the majority of us spend the majority of our time, our waking hours, in a work position, what message you're sending out, what community you create, what you call your work home is really, really critically important. And then, of course, people want to do what they want, the opportunity to do what they do best. And in our field, that's really, really hard to quantify, because even when you've done everything exactly the way you should have, you can still have a bad outcome on a patient. And that really does not only take its toll, but it chips away at that sense of accomplishment that folks have. So prior to meeting Kathy and prior to spending any amount of time preparing for that last webinar, I didn't know that, in fact, the majority of people now, frankly, are looking through jobs through social media. I mean, I sort of cognitively knew it, but I didn't really realize how much that impacted, right? That 71% are recruiting people through some form of job board or through their website. right? Nobody's walking in the door to an employer anymore to fill out an application. Those days are long over. In fact, what we know is if your job application through your website takes them more than 3 to 5 minutes to complete, boom, you're going to have them drop off and they're not going to ever finish applying. Those are statistics that you should be looking at if you use an applicant tracking system, or if you have the ability to track of the people who started an application, how many of them actually complete it. And if you haven't done this, go onto your website and try and apply for a job at your own organization. When I take on consulting clients, that's one of the first things I do. Why? I want to see what experience a candidate has. That matters now more than it has ever mattered. So 13% of organizations are increasing their recruitment and budget. They're increasing their budgets for recruitment and retention. 84% of them are using social media. And then, of course, 40% of folks are refreshing their employer brand. And that's something that Kathy's going to talk about here just in a minute or so. So employer branding and reputation. Most of the time, what I say to folks are, every organization has an employer brand, whether they realize they do or not. And if you haven't ever done so as an organization, go on to Glassdoor and look your organization up. If you want to know what people, or Reddit, you want to know what people are saying about you, go look at Glassdoor. Last time when we had Royal, Steve Grau and Eve Grau from Royal on, when we did their analysis, Royal had just won a Glassdoor Employer of Choice Award. That's an award that you win because Glassdoor looks at what people are saying about you, not because you filled out an application and paid some sort of fee. Glassdoor looks at what your people are saying about you and they award that to you. That's a huge, huge accomplishment, right? Your folks, again, if you are focusing on employer brand, right, which you have one no matter what, so you got to find out what it is, and then you need to rehabilitate it or at least augment it in some way, shape, or form. Strong employer brands experience like 30% lower turnover and get 50% more candidates. Now, anywhere you see an underlined hyperlink, the slides I've already sent off to Meg at the AAA. I think I did. If I didn't, I will right after this. You can follow that hyperlink. It'll take you to the underlying source material that I cited or got this information from, right? Organizations that invest in employer branding are 3 times more likely to have a quality hire, right? And 7 out of 10 changed their opinion about a brand after the company replied to a review. So in other words, if you go on Glassdoor and somebody lights you up like Sonny at the toll booth in The Godfather, go back in and spend a little bit of time replying to those. Some folks feel like, well, there's, when you wrestle with a pig, everybody gets dirty, but the pig likes it. What I'd say to you is there is a way to go in and meaningfully respond to negative reviews in a way that's respectful, and that in some instances, right, we know that the internet can be really sort of the lowest common denominator. But what I say to you is just recognize that there are folks who will see your attempts to respond to those comments, right? They know that there are those people who are out just trolling to say bad things about anybody, regardless of what it is. What I'd say is don't let that stuff hang out there. And on top of it, positive stuff is far more sticky in the sense of, the scroll, or as you're putting stuff out there, the more positive stuff you put out there, the further back it pushes negative stuff. So
Scott,
yeah.
that whole topic is another topic for a future webinar, because that's reputation management. And what I teach my students with reputation management is there's the component of your branded response. That's one component, but an overlooked component is the exchange and the dialogue. When somebody does post a review, you have to protect your brand in that when you respond, you do not mention your brand name, because when you do that, you are giving the Google algorithm all the signals that there's new content being populated about your brand. So it's really important when you respond that you think through the lens of both the actual response and the best protocol, but also the search engine optimization part. So there's actually 2 components.
Yeah, and that's, this is part of why I say, right, if the advantage to having you on here is that this is all you do. As an employment lawyer, when folks go like, hey, Scott, you're a lawyer, will you write my will? I go, sure, it'll be fun. Like, you ever written one before? I'm like, nope. but let's see what happens, right? Again, you don't go to a cardiac surgeon for shoulder surgery or a shoulder surgery for cardiac. You want someone who knows exactly what they're doing. And to this point, don't paddle upstream if you don't have to, correct? Right? Like use those algorithms, use the way the system or the architecture to your defense. And that's part of why we are.
Well, and train, it's the three, actually for the proper response, you go by the 3 T's, which is transparency. And you have to be timely. You have to respond within 0 to 4 hours, 0 hours, right? I mean, everybody wants a response right away. And then the third is training. So my students often ask me, well, what's the training part? I'm like, the training is that reputation management is throughout the company, because you could have somebody that's posting a review that is not it's not targeted to the marketing or sales or customer service. It could be targeted to somebody in purchasing. I had that happen with one client where there was a review that was put out by somebody who was delivering his tanker to the facility. It was a manufacturing facility. And so because reputation management is throughout the organization, through the intranet, there was, hey, there's this review that's been posted. The supply chain person, the person in shipping and receiving, knew immediately who it was. And she approached that person. He said, yeah, I did it in the heat of the moment. I'll take it down. So there was no exchange online. He took it down before it could, even cause some damage by getting a 1-star review.
Yeah. And so that's another important point, right? And I know that one of the reasons why I know some of the folks on here are I see what employees are saying about the organizations that they work for. And truthfully, if I'm going to go look at an organization, not only one, am I going to look, did they take the high road and respect and then act in a respectful way? And then number 2, really, what are their employees saying about them? Because truthfully, I know there's a statistic and I don't have it in front of me, but I know that folks believe more heavily or place far more weight on feedback or comments made by employees than they do by the company, right? Yes. And so looking to see, hey, and this is, I've had employers go like, well, we're not going to, in some states you have to post pay bands for particular jobs, but some folks think that that's like a trade secret. And what I want to say to them is everybody knows what you're paying. Why? And especially in this field, because it is public knowledge. So when it comes back to your point about transparency, right? If I go to an organization and I did a webinar using data to drive recruitment and retention and to drive retention in particular, and I said, if I went to a website or if I saw a social media feed that said, hey, 85% of our employees got out on time. Of the 15% that didn't get out on time, they got out within 20 minutes of their shift end time. Why? Because we know how important your personal life and your time is to you, and we respect that. Now, I've had some companies go, oh my gosh, we don't get people out on time that often, and it's going to look horrible. And I go, here's what I tell you is, even if the number's a little ugly, you send a message by saying that you're going to talk about it, right? It's not less ugly because you bring sunshine on, but it's not more ugly because you bring sunshine to it. In fact, what they're saying is, wow, these are people who are putting it right out there. Or, hey, 90% of our staff got an uninterrupted lunch today. For me, that's an organization that's telling a story about what it's like to work there. And frankly, they're not hiding from the, people say we have competitive benefits and wages. Well, so what are you going to say? We have horrible benefits and wages? Of course not. You're going to say so that again comes back to that. So the job experience piece, one of the things, or the candidate experience piece, one of the things that I'd say to folks are, and I know you and I have talked about this before, is that from the moment they first perceive your brand, they are potentially a candidate, right? Because when they're seeing what you're putting out there, either it be on social media or on their website, again, no ambulance services website is for patients, and no ambulance website is for hospitals and municipalities. I promise you the hospitals aren't looking at your website, and I can promise you the municipalities and patients aren't going like, who do I want to call for my emergency? Do I want to call such? No. This is for people internally, and it's for people who might consider coming to work for you. So you frame artwork based upon the message you're trying to send, just like you should here. So taking a look at and being conscious of what that experience is really, really important, because at the end of the day, your whole entire effort regarding your digital strategy is about building trust and about building some level of credibility with the people who are going to hopefully consider coming to work for you. So I am going to pass off the remote control over to Kathy. And so for the person you really came here to listen to a little bit longer than I intended, Kathy, if you want to take it away.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we're about 25 minutes in, so I've got probably about 25 minutes for this presentation, correct?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we wanted to take it one step further today. This is kind of the evolution of employer brand. And Scott, you had the statistic that 40% of companies are looking at revisiting their employer brand. You know, the employer brand is something that you have. And the first step in the process is really to evaluate where you are in the continuum from an HR perspective. From first that HR perspective and how that digital marketing overlays and really comes to bear what your true employer brand is. So in your organization, be honest with yourself and saying, are we kind of still in the realm of filling jobs? Take a look at your social posts and say, we've got jobs to fill. We've got open positions. It's very common to see. Or are you reframing that and saying, inviting people in to have a conversation with your team about really the objective of getting a team on board that makes, and this sounds, big and overarching. So I'm going to actually replace the word in 3.0 of world to your city or your community. Do you have the messaging out there that you are creating a community of employees that are making your city, your towns, your service area, those intertwined with you, making this community a better place because you are part of it. Also, your focus. So some companies have evolved beyond saying that, we are the employer, you're the employee, to saying, rather than having that separation of an employer with their employee base, that you're all in this together, no matter what position you hold. If you're manager, director, or owner, we are all stakeholders in this organization. It does not mean that you are necessarily employee owned. It means that you all have a stake. You're all stakeholders here, and that's how we view our collective web of people. In the past, employees were looked at as, an infinite resource. And this was part of what Scott was saying years ago too, is, there's not going to be an infinite resource of people that you can tap into. My students know it currently. It's an employee driven, it's an employee driven market, the job seeker driven market, because there are so many positions to fill. So that still holds true. So the messaging, it's more about, that we've got these employees that, create something for the organization, is the employees are an asset that you need to take care of, rather than something that you accumulate. The driving force in an employer brand, it is about not so much that we've got all this talent, or that, hey, we value this talent because they're maybe a little scarce out there. There might be fewer people that meet our criteria, but we are committed to really optimizing that human potential. And what I was saying to Scott earlier when we were discussing this presentation is, it is more than just the human potential in your mind. It's more than just the skill set developing. It's more than just the learning. And I see this with my students. It's the preparation to really learn. It's everything that you need in your life. It's the emotional strength. your mental well-being. I mean, the pandemic took a toll on every human being. And so, it's really making sure that you are taking care of yourself, and the organization is committed to having employees have the resources to take care of themselves so they can take care of others. And then preparing yourself that, we'll learn together. And that's important in the culture too. I saw with my students yesterday, we were at an entire day workshop of digital marketing. So you want to hear about digital marketing from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. in our region? We were able to. Well, we had a large lunch, a Wisconsin style lunch with a lot of heavy food. And I could tell with my crew, when the presentation, this is not a good time to present, actually, is after lunch. So I hope everybody is okay right now, because it is after lunch. But I could tell with my crew that they just needed some fresh air and they needed to reboot. And so we actually instead had a debrief on the morning sessions rather than attending another afternoon session, took a break, and then we're prepared to learn and finished the whole seminar strong. So that's an example of really, when you are in the relationship with the employees, with each other, with the manager, is getting a read. And to optimize the human potential, you're going to find out in your organization what is the best time to onboard new employees. And that experience from new employees, it's going to get out to others to say, they really do a great job of onboarding, of training here. I feel like that I'm learning and growing not only in my skill set, but I'm becoming stronger as a human being, mentally and emotionally. The value proposition. So companies have gotten a pretty good job of, really trying to say, we fulfill, your functional needs with good, good pay, good benefits, all of that. But what about more of the emotional and spiritual in terms of fulfilling those needs in an organization? How do you address that? And that quickly ties into somebody who feels that they have a desire to have this whole blended work-life balance. And as I did the assessment of the 2 case studies, this area is something I think collectively in the industry that the industry can share ideas on how you achieve a blended work-life balance when you're on call all the time. I don't have the answers for you because I don't work as an EMT and I don't work in the EMS industry in another support role, but blending that work-life balance is something that I'm seeing with my students continuously. Because again, the pandemic changed everything. My students were used to doing all of their learning online during the pandemic. And there are times where they feel they can reboot and recharge in their home environment in front of a computer doing work rather than being around others. But yet here, I want them to be around others as a team in the morning to come together, where then in the afternoon, then they go off and they work with clients. Now that is something that takes a level of trust in an organization, but especially this generation coming out, the generation that's coming into the workforce has a strong desire to have this blended work-life balance. And that's something that needs to be discussed in organizations and need to be innovative on how you provide it, where it's a win-win for both the organization and the employee. And you need to be transparent on social media on how you describe it. And then finally, the relationship with the customers. I've seen really good stuff in the industry about how you have relationships with the customer. It's the community stories. It's the stories with patients. It's the stories of getting out into the community and doing all these great, what is it? What is an EMT and what do we do? And talking in the school. So kudos on that. Looking at the case studies, I saw a lot of that. So that's good stuff. So the evolution of the brand, checking off all these boxes. you've got here 7 different categories. My mind's always thinking as a digital marketer, I see 7 different reasons to continually post on social media. These could be your content buckets. It could be how we make a community a better place. We're going to talk about that once a week. How do we treat our, like, collectively, how are we stakeholders in the mission of our organization? How do we treat our employees as more than just an employee, that they're a true asset to our organization? I see a lot of that with the Star Awards and things like that, so that's good. How do we optimize that human potential? Candid stories on somebody, taking that next step in their mental health journey or their learning journey. How do we address those functional, the great benefits, the great things that you can provide functionally, but also the emotional side of it, even spiritual. I saw spiritual in terms of, I'm not saying that it's spiritual in terms of religious. I'm saying it's spiritual in terms of the way that I feel with others, the way that I feel when I'm caring for somebody as a patient, as I would my own family member. And then the blended work-life balance, being transparent about that once you have solutions and examples, and then of course, continuing on the relationship with the community.
And I would imagine keeping in those 7 areas that you also create sort of a floor, right? In other words, people don't tend to drop. You're keeping a level of almost positivity. If you continue to focus on those areas, right, then you won't end up, sort of in the proverbial sewer, like sometimes social can do.
Well, exactly. Well, it gives you the content calendar, keeps everything very organized and focused and clear for the organization. The content calendar for social media can be shared with anyone in the organization, and it should be, because the number one challenge marketers have is creating content. Mm-hmm. I need some content ideas. If you would ask my interns, that's what they hear from clients. Help me with social media because I'm just running out of content ideas. Now, if you have your buckets, we call them content buckets. I mean, all 7 of these could be content buckets. That's now great. You have the ability to tell the organization, we're looking for ideas. This is what our employer brand is about. And because social media, what people are looking at social media for, and if they're looking at you on social media, more than likely, they're looking at what are you like as an employer? I mean, right. That's honestly, I mean, this is your amplification. This is the way you can amplify your message. That's what they're looking for on social media, unless they know that something was posted about a friend or about an employee. They might be friends of the employee and they want to congratulate them. But a lot on here on social media will be, people are going to look at your feed. They're going to see how recently or how frequently also you are posting. And then they're going to make a judgment call on whether or not you're going to fulfill something that is important to them. And it's probably on the column of 3.0 is probably the work-life balance. How much support and training am I going to get? EMT is in all the support roles is viewed as more of a higher stakes, definitely, and more stress related. So they are looking for information on that balance and those emotional needs too.
As we jump to the next slide, I just want to quickly, Rodney asked a question that says, in responding to a Glassdoor remark from a current or former employee, how cautious should you be as to about running foul of the National Labor Relations Act, Section 7, Section 8, which really gets at, whether employees can discuss wages, benefits, working conditions, and their ability to do so in sort of protected measures. So what I would say is generally what I tell any management or leadership team as they're responding to things, or one, you can never, there's been a couple of recent rulings by the NLRA and NLRB about restricting people's ability from a confidentiality perspective or a non-disparagement perspective. You can't You can't prevent people from saying disparaging things about your organization. The National Labor Relations Board has recently ruled on that you can't force them to sign agreements to say they won't say things that are negative. What I would say is be as transparent as you can be honest, and of course, no, tips. I think it's no threats, no promises, no, you shouldn't be saying like, well, if you do this, we'll do this, or, if our folks joined a union. Those are things you want to avoid. So really just, I would respond directly to the poster, and I would say something. If they're saying this place isn't a great place to work, you could say, we're really sorry that you didn't have a great experience. We'd love to have opportunity to talk with you about how we could have improved it. Boom.
Right.
That's a nice general way to respond to that. And it keeps you're not running afoul of Section 7. And then, of course, you can never retaliate. That's another thing. By the way, that doesn't fare well in social media world when folks retaliate. And to Kathy's point about employee candidates want to work for people, right? And even customers don't want to patronize organizations that treat their people poorly, right? So again, what you say about your people says a lot about who you are as a provider of service. So.
Well, and also to the point that, if you ask any student in my classroom, which, again, this is the generation coming in, they expect every brand is going to have a negative review, including Glassdoor. They expect those negative reviews, and they're looking again for that honesty and transparency, but also protect yourself from an SEO perspective. Keep in mind that this review is happening on a site that's being indexed like every other site by Google. So you don't want to say at such and such organization, we take pride in doing this. So just make sure that in the response, you are not mentioning your brand name, because you don't want to give any more amplification where you would show up in search results.
Good point. Great point.
Yeah.
All right. So our 2 case studies.
Yep.
Pro EMS in Cambridge, Massachusetts, AAA member, and then Cataldo. I think you bounced one forward. Cataldo Ambulance, also a Massachusetts-based organization. By the way, I'm pretty sure I could probably convince Kathy to do this again in a while. And if your organization is interested in being analyzed, we'd love to hear that. But anyway, go ahead, please.
Okay, so looking at the lens of the 7 different categories of being an employer brand that's on the 3.0 scale, looking at employees, this post in particular looks at employees as assets, using phrases such as amazing crew. And that also our love for the dispatch team. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using the word love if it is something that your brand is comfortable with, and saying that we truly do love the dispatch team. So stakeholders watching over us. So consider that choice of verb as well, in terms of, watching over us. Somebody, these are the people behind the scenes, really that are making it all happen, and they're watching over you. So it is that we're stakeholders together. Community, so that here they're giving special thanks to partner agencies and their telecommunicators. So in one post, you were able to check the boxes off of 3 different categories. So this was like a trifecta. I mean, sometimes you stop at amazing crew, but they moved forward and really started to look at it through the lens of being stakeholders together, and then building a better community. And in this case, it's building a better community with your partner agencies and their telecommunicators, which I thought was just really well done. And it did resonate with, one person saying 3 of the best. Well, if you know who Pat is, you can acknowledge and thank Pat for saying that this crew 3 is 3 of the best, and look at his passion with punctuation. He's like obviously very excited that they're featured with the 4 exclamation points. So, responding to these social posts is, again, the double benefit where you're showing to Google that you've got some traction. And so maybe this will show up in a feed again for someone else. That's why you respond, because it's the right thing to do, but you respond on social media because it's the right thing to do for SEO. So you, as it's just posting, because this is a brand that's posting on social media, on a good day, you'll get in front of 5% of your followers. So that's why, 54 likes is actually pretty good. That's why brands are getting so frustrated, is that their organic reach, some people are just saying that it's just not going to happen. And 5% isn't much. So you need to try to amplify as much as you can in terms of responding to any comment that comes in. All right, next. So we're looking at delivering employer brand 3.0 on both employees being assets, but then also this area of the functional, emotional, and spiritual needs. So Cataldo, I love this. It's a Superstar Saturday. It's, acknowledging them on, and hats off to the team that are acknowledging them on the weekends. It's a hard time to work. Also for a social media manager, you're always working through the weekends anyway, so it's not easy on the marketing side either. But for employees as assets, using the words superstar and rock star, I know our interns love when they're called rock stars by our clients. It seems to be a phrase that people like to be associated with. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, I was really struck by the statement that the EMT treats everyone with respect and dignity as he would his own family. So I think that is on the good path and the good trajectory in terms of really saying that when you're working alongside others, you are really working with people who are focused on the whole person.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the concepts, I feel, at least from these two case studies, and granted, I mean, if I was doing research on this, which, like I said, I'm a practitioner, not a researcher, so I'm going to give you the action plan rather than the research. So I didn't look at more than two in the industry this time, just like last time, but you can look at others in your industry and say, okay, am I getting some ideas on these categories: making the community a better place, employees as stakeholders, their assets, people optimizing the human potential, addressing functional, emotional, and spiritual needs, blending the work and life balance, and then the relationship that you have with the community that you serve. So I did not see a lot in terms of optimizing the human potential. So again, think about all of the needs. And I'm just going to put ideas out there. If it's yoga, if it's meditation, if it's skill workshops, the hard skill workshops, if it's anything that you can put on the list that your team is doing, as both from the wellness perspective and from the educationalist perspective, that's good to share. And the blended work-life balance, if it's something that you as an organization all agree that you've delivered on with your team, and that your team feels the same, that this is something that really could attract other employees who want the same, then I would encourage you to do it. And if you have hesitation on whether or not it should be on social media or not, don't post it right away. Show other business owners. It doesn't matter if they are working in EMS or not. Show your trusted friend that may be a successful entrepreneur in another space, and say, I'm thinking about putting this out there. What do you think? How do you think this would make our organization look like? Do you think that there are any issues surrounding it? Do you think we're backing ourselves into a corner that now we have to deliver on what we say we're going to do? Or do you think because we do practice this and we do offer this blended work-life balance that we should make that transparent? Like I said, I don't have the answers because I don't work in the industry, but I know from having students in the classroom week after week, they want the blended work-life balance. Going further. Okay, so step one. So I've got 3 steps I want to cover. And my goodness, we have 10 minutes, don't we, Scott?
We may run a little long.
We're going to run a little long.
If people drop off, we understand. Sorry, that's because I, get paid by the word, so I talk long.
I will go really fast. I will go really fast, I promise. So there's 3 things, there's 3 steps that I want organizations to come away with in terms of what to look at on their website and what to look at on their Google business profile and on social media. And I'll go through it really quick. So the first thing is you are actively recruiting your employees, your future stakeholders. And so you need to make sure that you have pages, landing pages that are labeled correctly. The URL is the first step in search engine optimization. There are hundreds of different things that you can do on the page, so many different things, but I'm going to cover the first and the most important, because I think then you can have a dialogue with your organization. And if you work with a web developer, you can work with that person as well to address this. So Pro EMS, they're doing a great job on their marketing. Holistically, I'm very impressed. Their landing page, though, is set up where it's called employment. Now, I looked at, well, who's looking at employment in the Boston area? So if somebody is going to say to Google, this is what we want our page to be known for, we want you to give us searches related to employment. You're going to get people who need advice on being unemployed, and you're going to get people who are looking for disability employment services, and then you're going to get employment lawyers. So now, because it's called employment, you're competing against lawyers or employment lawyers. And these are pretty high search volume. So you're talking about, 3,600 searches, or employment lawyers, 1,600 searches, and it's trending. This is monthly search volume. So it's too broad. It's not the space that you want to be in. So it should be revamped. Now, Cataldo has their landing page as EMS jobs. So that, is a service category. These are all the jobs within EMS that we have to provide. Now, within EMS jobs, there are about 547 words, like keywords, that Google would give to you because they're associated. They're associated with people searching and landing on pages similar to yours. And if you were to advertise for EMS jobs, you have low competition in the Boston area. And then what it's saying at 7 cents, so here at 7 cents, is that's the average cost per click that somebody is paying on average 7 cents for somebody to click on an ad that says we have EMS jobs, if you would to use Google advertising to advertise for it. Search volume about 3,300. So you want to say, hey, I want people searching for EMS jobs. I want just a piece of that. So if you would advertise to it, you've got some low competition, which is nice. And then this, with the volume and the trends, is all Boston area, because that's where the clients I was given, that's the general vicinity, that they're located. So here you're going to see that people are searching for how much EMTs make, jobs near me. You want that. So EMT jobs near me, EMT jobs Boston, and Boston EMS jobs is actually trending. So EMS jobs, just for that key term, is kind of low at 30, so 30 volume, but it's trending up. But if you look at it holistically with related keywords, now you're getting some volume. So if you would advertise, this is the page that you would want to take them to, not your homepage, but your actual EMS jobs page. So that's what you have to think from a digital marketing perspective. Even if you have something posted on social media, don't take them with the link to your homepage. Actually take them to the page that's related to jobs. Yes.
And this kind of comes back to, like, I hear photographers criticizing cooks. They'll say, look, you can buy a great set of pans, or you can buy a really nice camera, but that doesn't make you a photographer, and it certainly doesn't make you a chef. If you have someone in your organization who dabbles in social media, that may be doing you a disservice, because you actually don't understand to the level that, like, some of you and your interns may know about how to leverage the way search engine optimization works, how to leverage these key terms, right? That's how you start to really, as they say, cook with gas, to use an old term.
Well, and here's your potential. That data
Right.
is all out there. There's your potential of people who are searching. And I would say that EMT salary is something that you want those searches, because people want to know how much you're going to make.
Right. If they're looking at salary, they're interested in jobs. If they're interested in jobs, that's what you make. That's an eyeball you want to.
So that's the difference between asking for traffic from Google when you have EMS jobs versus having employment. And so check that. I encourage everybody in the industry to check that, and then work with a optimization specialist you trust to get a landing page that is labeled correctly, but also that's optimized correctly.
Just a follow-up question. What does that run an organization from a cost perspective, right? Because that's one of the things that I hear EMS agencies like say, well, geez, we only have a limited amount of resources to be able to spend on recruitment or retention, or on maybe publicity, or public relations marketing. What can a reasonably priced organization that does SEO, or that can really optimize this, what is that ballpark?
Well, it's going to be different by different geographic areas, and it's going to be depend on who you talk to. So in the agency environment, people working in advertising agencies charge as much per hour as an attorney could charge almost. You're talking about north of $100
an hour. Well, and I always say to people when they go, like, can I get some free legal advice? I go, it'll be worth everything you paid for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And so I say, like, geez,
how many hours do you need? So, like, if somebody could get it done in 10 hours of time, is that $1,000 worth it? Or do you want to pivot and say, I want to work with a student who is just out of college and looking for an internship. And that's why I get bombarded with internship opportunities all the time from employers, because they kind of want to go that route where they say, well, we know, they come with this skill set, and if we can teach them about the business, then they can implement.
Right.
So that's why a lot of companies are chasing the interns, is because the interns can produce the work at a lower rate.
So most of our attendees could go to a college, community college, or university near them and see if they're there will be a digital marketing department. There will be a business school, and you can find someone who likely can do this for you.
If they are successful in partnering with a professor in a classroom, I want to get that message to you, Scott, because I want to know that they had a win. Because normally when a company, we were approached by firefighters that wanted this for their organization. And we've been approached by all sorts of nonprofits. We've been approached by for-profit businesses. I have a situation where you literally have to wait in line, and we can't possibly get to everyone with all the demand. So it is definitely worth asking. 110% ask.
And that's an easy
If you're successful, I want to know, because that is huge for your organization. That is huge, because normally the requests are coming in constantly that the answer you're probably more than likely could get is, we'd love to help, but we don't have the resources.
Well, so to that point though, right? It's an easy as picking up the phone, asking for the business school, asking for digital marketing professor, and then asking, right? I mean, to some people, that sometimes is the thing that prevents them from getting this done, is just what's the first step? And so, all right.
And don't forget, business school is one option. Don't forget that also schools, both tech colleges and four-year universities have journalism departments that also have PR departments and advertising departments within their department. So we have a wonderful advertising program and PR department that's not associated with the College of Business. So it might be a different call to a different department, and you might get the same result.
Right. And so I wanted to say, I know we're at the top of the hour, and I know we're going to continue to move. We're going to continue to stay on for those who can stay on. This will be recorded for those of you who have a hard stop at 3 o'clock Eastern, and you can pick it up tomorrow for the remainder. So sorry, Kathy, for holding it long, but go ahead.
I just want to cover Google Business Profile and then give you the social media tools and resources. So it'll be quick. Okay, so optimizing your Google Business Profile, you need to make sure that it's claimed. I hope everyone in the industry has claimed it. If they have not, you need to search yourself. You need to see what Google has populated for your business profile. And when you scroll, if this was a scroll, if this was live, it would be asking the question, claim this business. And so if you haven't claimed it, you need to claim it. The rule of thumb that our interns say to our clients is that you need to update your photos every 3 months or even more frequently. You need to have 3 product or service photos, 3 photos of your business. So, looking at, what does the business look from the outside, and at least 1 photo of your team. You need to encourage those reviews. I know we did talk about what happens with negative ones, but you still have to flood it with the positive and encourage reviews. And try to include, here's another SEO tip. Try to include keywords in your reviews. So if somebody gets a great review of an EMT, make sure that you said, we are so happy that, John, your EMT provided great care. So
pro EMS EMT provided great care. Okay, great.
Right. Use posts in your profile for updates and recruiting events. What do I mean by that? Pro EMS has done this. They use Google as a tool, business profile. You can actually post updates. So this was in February, was when they were doing a few of these, and I would say continue on and continue doing those efforts. So here they've got their keyword, good, EMT. So all of that will help them. Another step further is those images that you put up there. Do you know that you could geotag them for free? And those are the geotag approximate coordinates for the Boston area. Here you are keywords of EMT jobs, EMS jobs, and Boston EMS. And then you have her name, but that she's earning an EMT pin. Where? In Boston. Right. So this is a resource that they have a free version, they have a paid version, and I did all this with a free version. So what I did was I uploaded the screenshot, and you would actually upload an image. I just wanted to do this for position only. And I have the geotag of where they're located, and then the keywords. What you end up doing is you download that image again, and now those geotags are embedded in your image. So, and then when you have that, that's what you end up uploading. So that extra process, upload, geotag, download, and then upload again to Google Business Profile, you are then giving another signal to Google that you absolutely are in Boston area and you absolutely are associated with EMT.
And pro EMS, arguably, and right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. You can put your brand name in there too. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about quickly the 4 zones of social media marketing, how I kind of looked for this type of content for each of the case studies. And then basically our session's wrapped up. So we didn't do too bad on time. We're just a bit over.
And we've held most people. Most people are still.
Good. So when I teach social media marketing, I go back to the 4 zones. Now, social media marketing has been around since the mid 2000s. When Facebook really came out in 2004. And a lot of that was centered around this community aspect of social. So sharing information, socializing with others, having conversations with others in social media. So the orange zone is everything that we're familiar with. That is just the start. Then you had the whole area of social publishing coming in next. So then blogs started to take off. People were producing content. They were producing their own editorial content. They were getting involved with the commercialization of that content even. And then with the evolution of Instagram, you really saw user-generated content growing, where other people on social media were starting to talk about the brands. And so then now you've got influencers, coming on board, and companies and brands having relationships with them. So that is really on the publishing content. Now with the ease of the Shopify and everything else, you have a lot of commerce. Now, where do you guys fit in with commerce? Well, that's, certainly the HR side, because now you are having a transaction. You're using Glassdoor, you're using social media to actually have some sort of relationship where the end result is a hire. Finally, we're going to talk about the pink. Now, the pink is very interesting. Pink with entertainment gives you the ability to do some gamification, to do some contests, some polls, to use video as an art form, to incorporate music, to entertain your audience. There's a fine line. So we want to be entertaining, but not too entertaining per se. All right, building community. Overall, well, let's take the same post that we talked about earlier with 54 likes. This is based on 1,766 followers. So in order to find your engagement rate, it's really simple. You just divide the 54 by 1,766. An engagement rate of 3% is actually really good. Some brands struggle to even get 1% these days. So you have an engagement rate of 3%, not bad. I mentioned the need to respond, even to just the shortest of posts. Respond with a thank you. The use of hashtags or not. The same research tool that I was showing you for the keyword research, you can actually do research on hashtags. If you don't have a keyword research tool, I'm going to show you just the way to get hashtag data using one platform. You can do it on social media platforms as well. And knowing when to post is very valuable. So using those analytics within social media to gauge when people are interacting with your content will give you a clue on the best time to post. Here's what I'm talking about, doing some hashtag research using just a social media platform. So this post by, do you know this organization, Scott?
Remsa? Oh yeah. Yep. They're a AAA member. Yep.
All right. So Remsa came up for me when I used the Explore page feature on Instagram. How do you find the Explore page feature? This is when you open up Instagram and you scroll to the bottom. This is my profile here, so you know it's my account. I go to the search icon, and then I searched hashtag EMS. So if I'm just going to be searching, like, I'm just wondering what's being put out there by EMS companies, because maybe I want to work for one. Mm-hmm. So look at all these related hashtags.
Yep.
These were the related hashtags that came up in posts that just were associated with EMS. I think these are hashtags that you guys would want.
Right.
Even the memes. I'm sure you've had a lot of discussions about the memes on social media with EMS. Even looking at what your industry is doing there, but these like EMT life, like, why wouldn't you want a hashtag EMT life? EMT humor or emergency services. Whoops, sorry. Emergency services, that's important too. I'm just going through everything now.
Just, I'm going to back it up.
Yeah, if you could, please. It's not working for me.
I
see. Well, now I got it.
It's just backspace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once I handed remote control over to you, it did wonky things with mine.
Okay. All right. So the good news is that Instagram. So for example, you're going to have a little bit more traction on doing these kind of posts on Instagram than Facebook, because it's so far, it equally favors some of this content for personal and business accounts. So Remsa is getting, we feel, at least now marketers today are saying it could change tomorrow, but at least Instagram is a little bit more fair. So if you're not on Instagram, I recommend that you go on Instagram because you have a greater potential for your branded content to be seen. On the publishing side, so what makes sense for your industry? Edutainment videos. I know this one is on a foam roller that, my husband and I use, because we're getting older and need to feel good before we go for a run. So it's addressing what exactly is foam rolling and why should I roll? So it's addressing a question. So using a keyword research tool to know the questions that are associated with your industry. What exactly does an EMT do? So edutainment is very important. User-generated content is really important. I'm sure in the industry you've talked about employees creating their own content to share. So there's nothing wrong with it if it's something that you think is pretty cool, share it. Now, if that employee leaves in the future, you can delete it. You can delete that post if it's 2 years old and they've left the organization. That's what you want to do. So it's on your own content. So you're still in control of it. So the user-generated content, employees creating their own content to share, there's no reason why you can't share what they've created. On Instagram, there's the ability to do a collaboration post. Now, what I mean by that is you are co-posting with another brand. So some of these other partner agencies that have Instagram accounts work with somebody in marketing that is able to just, when you're setting up your post, it will ask you if you want to collab with another account. So you could actually reach both of your followers in one post. So both your partner agency followers and yours, and you might get some likes and follows between both of you. The third zone is commerce. So like I said, the HR side, the recruiting side, here's one thing to talk about on the pro EMS side. So when I went to click on the LinkedIn link from the that EMS jobs page, it took me to the ability on LinkedIn to share, which is great, but you need to say something like, if you want to share our jobs, here's how you do it. Click on this link. Give me some instructions rather than me just finding this LinkedIn link and I want to know what your company is about. I'm not necessarily ready to share it. So that's what happened. And that's what that screenshot is on the left side.
To what extent do you think that's because, for a lot of the folks in the range of EMT age 20s, LinkedIn is, there are still many of them will have LinkedIn, but it's not exactly, my kids don't even know what it is. And so, I wonder to what extent it's because they sort of maybe don't this, because you said, I think we talked about that this wasn't exactly their most active social site.
No, in fact, they don't have any posts on their LinkedIn company page.
Is there still value there?
You need to consider your audience and go through your hires and assess who made a position change, a career change. Because people who have a LinkedIn presence and have different careers, sales, marketing, customer service, if they're making a career change, they might check you out on LinkedIn first if they know that you're hiring. And if they see that you don't have anything to share, they don't have any initial information on you.
Good point. That's great.
So that's the lens that I was looking at it as, because what you're asking me to do from this page is to share it on LinkedIn. And if I'm going to share it on LinkedIn, people are going to go to the company page and they're going to see nothing.
Right. Good point.
Okay.
That's great.
All right. Another part on social commerce, I looked at Cataldo. Love that you've put together a brochure and you're having an open house and you have these open positions. The engagement rate was very low, at 0.15. Why? Because, and by the way, 5,200 followers is really good. So good job on your follower count. The reason why is the only thing you're saying in your description is today. You're not providing a link. Again, you have to provide a link, not to the web homepage, but to your page that you've created that's EMS. So all
EMS
the
jobs, right? EMS jobs.
EMS jobs, right. So make it easy to say we have all these position descriptions on this page. come find out more at our open house. So running a marathon with this open house, you were at mile 24. You just needed to connect some of these pieces to have the right landing page and some information in the description. So great job on a professional marketing piece with a professional image of people. That's all good. And doing the open house is a lot of work. So it's just taking that extra step and then having that link in place. Another opportunity, again, how do we get found? It's still hashtags as opportunity. Remember, people are using that search feature. And then you could also have separate posts. One of our open positions is for a dispatcher. Find out more about what a dispatcher does. Come to our open house. So you've got the ability to do separate posts on all of the other positions that exist. Finally, entertainment. Like I said, there's a fine line. So this company did a whole Broadway style theater lighting,
Montage, musical montage, yeah, of some kind, yeah.
Celine Dion full tilt show. And it's awesome. They had Dick's Sporting Goods saying, hey, very cool. They had, if you see this, Mark, they had, 17,000 likes and 186 comments. Now, is this entertaining? Well, absolutely. But it's going to take an awful lot of time in your schedule. And it's a big push for, going viral. We're going to go viral, and this is pretty cool. Now, if their employees are all excited about going viral, great. Some of your mission may have been accomplished, but it takes an awful long time. But the video is still, even with that said, video is so important because 100 minutes each day. I know how many times my students are on TikTok. And we've got a surge with YouTube Shorts as well, and Reels is always popular. So how do we do this? How do we get this accomplished without doing a whole Broadway production? You do it by showing the real team. I mean, this was a team, I think they were, just jumping up and down about, spring in the air. And it was shared as a reel. Great. This is wonderful. So you can also embrace other platforms. YouTube really wants to be in this vertical video space. You can use YouTube Shorts. TikTok. Now, TikTok can be used as a video editing tool. I'm not allowed to, in the state university system, tutors, I cannot use TikTok, and I cannot teach TikTok any longer in the classroom. But it's still in the workforce, it can be used as a video editing tool, and the logo can be removed and the video can be shared on other platforms. Personally, that's what I would use it for. I would use it as a fun video editing tool, and then I would share it on the platforms that are going to give you traction. Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Finally, I want to share with you a resource. This is a lot to throw at you, but digital marketing, specifically really getting your brand reputation credible, being a thought leader, trustworthy, which is at the center of all of this, is the effort. We've talked a lot about what you post on your own channels. I mean, that's basically your owned media, is basically sharing it with others. There's the ability also, to have influencers talk about you, to be in the press, to have link building, to have, word of mouth, people just sharing your brand to earn that media. But then also we touched on at the beginning of the presentation about paid media. Remember that 5% on Facebook. So if you are organically posting to Facebook and you want to find employees, you're going to have to do paid media. And make sure that your pages are actually the names and the keywords that people are searching for. So this is a research, this is a resource that is something that my interns are going to be using, and they learned all about it yesterday at the conference we were at. But I thought this was, I teach poem in the classroom, is paid, owned, and earned media, but I like that element also put in there for you guys of the shared aspect. So this is a real tool online. It's called Spin Sucks. That's really the name. And you can get this resource and other articles about social media marketing, digital marketing, reputation management, and everything that we talked about. So that is my final slide.
And I will.
We're just going to open up to questions.
Yeah, I will.
We're about 20 minutes over, so not so bad.
Yeah. So questions, and I know many of you still held on. We lost probably 20 or so.
Yeah.
And I know we're way after the time. Most of that's my fault. I told Kathy I would talk for like maybe 10 minutes at the beginning, and then I talked for 25. So what I would say is questions. I know we answered a few questions that came up. Most of them were, will this be available by this recording be available? Megan will take this video, and either later today or tomorrow you will see the recording be announced. Usually it's in the Daily Digest, or you can go to the AAA website after the fact. And if you registered for the webinar, you'll be able to then access that link. The other thing I'd say is go back and take a look at the one that we did back in October of 21. Bell Ambulance and Royal. I want to, of course, thank Pro EMS, Bill Mergendahl, and the team at Pro, as well as Dennis Cataldo and the team at Cataldo Ambulance for being willing. It is a lot to put yourself out there and to offer to be a guinea pig for this. But again, we'll hopefully very likely do this again at some point in the future. And if your organization is one that wants to volunteer up your social and web presence, we would love to have that. I don't see any questions, and I can see folks starting to drop off. Just if you're looking to, of course, any questions that you do have, hello@ambulance.org. That will go into the ticketing system, and we can route it to the right person. I did just get a question. What are the costs of a good recruitment campaign for 6 months? So that is like, how do you boil the ocean? What I would say is, and I'm not meaning to be fresh, what I'd say is it really depends on the market you're in. It really depends on the medium that you're going to tackle. A good recruitment campaign, it can vary. It can be, if it's internally done with assistance from consultants who have done some of this social branding, web presence, as well as human resource folks who really know how to look at your entire application process, determine whether, in fact, as we said, is it taking too long for people to get through? As I joked about a former boss who said, well, what if somebody comes here to apply for a job? I said, you clearly are disengaged with how it is that people get employment these days. So I don't mean to answer the question with not really an answer, a typical lawyer, but what I would say is I've seen them anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000, right? I don't mean to give a range, but it can be incredibly, it can be affordable. But again, what you want is multifaceted. So not just a social brand, not just, it is looking at not only how you're bringing people in, who is doing that interviewing, who are sourcing those candidates, what the process is, what experience do your candidates have, and then how you are positioning yourself from a social perspective. If you want, do me a favor, send that question into hello@ambulance.org, and I will then circle back around with you to see if maybe I can connect you with a few, or I will actually reach out to a few and just see if I can get some sort of concrete dollars. I'd love to know where you're located as well, because what you're going to pay in downtown Boston is going to be very different than what you might pay in rural, Missouri or Alabama. So unless Kathy, you've got some other suggestions on that.
Well, I would only add, like, on the social media side. So once you know what your goals are, a consultant is really going to help you with your goals, unless you already know your goals. If
Right.
you've got, 10 open dispatch positions, there you're going to need on the marketing side, a social media and search and optimization expert that can create a landing page that is just about dispatch positions. And then you are utilizing advertising to drive traffic to that page. So there's a lot. I mean, you can do interest-based targeting, you can do lookalike targeting. So if you've got a lot of employees that are following you on your social channels, you could ask the Meta platform, which is Instagram and Google, to find new people on those social channels that look like your current audience. You can do retargeting, which involves putting a pixel on your website. And then you're going Facebook, Meta, Instagram will target those people on their social media channels that have hit your website or if certain, have hit your social channels. So there's a lot of opportunities and it's not super expensive. I mean, in most markets, we're talking about, spending hundreds of dollars a month, not necessarily thousands of dollars. Right. But really where the planning, and I really think that the value comes in, you don't want to be paying for wasted reach. And you also don't want to be paying for people that are searching for positions that are not related to your industry because they clicked on your ad. So it really requires having somebody that's an expert in the field.
Yeah, and that comes down. So the follow-up was that they're in California, which, kind of like on either side of the country, it tends to be more expensive. But again, you can always hire someone who helps you, as sort of Kathy pointed out, identifying what your goals are, so that then, and that's what the consultant will help you do. And then utilizing the right tool, which may be either another service or consultant that understands how to use that. In other words, you don't want to be paying, you don't want to set it up so that people are clicking, costing you money, and it's not.
But you want to also know what you're paying for. So you want some trusted advisor that's going to say that this proposal is not going to work. And you also, if you find somebody that's totally reasonably priced, you have to find out what their backlog of work is, because I've given work to freelancers in the past and they get completely booked up because they're in high demand, and you might be waiting 3-4 months for something. And then there's also resources from other countries that are willing to do SEO and advertising for you. And do you want to be working alongside somebody that's in another country? Not saying it's good, bad, or otherwise, but you have time change, you have cultural, or somebody who really understands your region. You'll have that dynamic where you'll have to drive a lot of that content yourself. You'll have to basically set it up for them and they'll just execute. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it.
Yeah. So again, if you want to send in a hello@amls.org, we can follow up on that. But anyways, I know we're 30 minutes past roughly, and I know Meg was supposed to be on the government affairs call that's occurring right now. So I want to thank Meg. I want to thank Kathy for agreeing to do this with me again. Thank you so very much. Your expertise. It's funny how every single time I listen to this, I go like, that's why that happens, or this is how that works. And then not realizing that it is far more sophisticated than I ever gave thought to. So I can't thank you enough. I want to thank those who all held on for the additional time. And I also want to thank Meg and Tristan for, putting all this together. So Kathy, thank you so much. I look forward to reconnecting with you again, and I will pass it back to Meg to close us out.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Kathy. As I mentioned at the top of the call, and you'll see on my screen, to access the on-demand webinar tomorrow, on the AAA's homepage, you can just click here on webinars, and you will see an entire section of just our on-demand webinars. So the recording and the PowerPoint slides will both be available tomorrow on the website. So feel free to download those, share them with those within your organization. And again, please email hello@ambulance.org if you have any specific service related questions or would like to get into contact with Scott or Kathy. So that is it for today's webinar. Thank you guys for joining us and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.